152397.
News Talk STL. This hour of the Allman Report brought to you by STL Fenceworks, celebrating 50 years of industry-leading service for fence, deck, and leisure space solutions. Visit stlfenceworks.com.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and happy Fancy Friday to all of you and yours. This is the Allman Report on News Talk STL. Jamie Allman here, super excited to be with you. Ashlyn is right there. And, all right, so, it's interesting. As I said yesterday, this whole effort to kind of turn this into some George Floyd thing is failing miserably. So, the vermin is basically isolated just in Minneapolis. It's the only place. I think there was some kind of protest or something last week or something in Clayton or what have you. But for the most part, the George Floyding of this thing isn't working out for those people. The very few people who actually are upset about all of this. And, of course, as you know, the mayor and the governor of Minneapolis and the governor of Minnesota are just trying to extract some kind of insurrection clause reaction from President Trump because they need the fraud investigation to go away. So they need to exacerbate this as much as they can. And so far they've been successful in doing that. There is, however, a more widespread revelation now that the Somalis control the Minneapolis airport as well. And there is a unbelievable amount of fraud occurring there as well. In fact, Somalis are very, very prevalent at many airports around the country. I've had firsthand knowledge of that. But in Minneapolis, they basically run the airport, which might explain why it's been so easy to transfer millions and millions in cash through the airport and beyond. But that's another story for another time. Speaking of the dissipation of this attempt to make this like a George Floyd thing, even Paul Begala, who is like this screaming crazy liberal on CNN, acknowledges one thing that most Americans acknowledge as well. Check it out.
Years ago, when Democratic cities started saying this, I criticized that, probably on your show.
About sanctuary cities.
From some of these mayors. They make a good point. I still think that we should have one federal immigration law, and cities should be obligated to help enforce it.
One law, one federal law, cities obligated to enforce it. And, this isn't the sovereignty of the federal government has been clearly defined. It took 600,000 or more deaths to do that in the Civil War. So even Begala understands that cities need to be obligated to follow federal law. That doesn't mean that the 10th Amendment doesn't exist. It just means that there are situations where the sovereignty of the federal government has been clearly defined. So that's why most Americans don't care what's going on in Minneapolis in terms of their outrage. Even some reporters at the press room yesterday, you noticed they were asking about health care and gas prices yesterday for the most part. Jim Talent, happy Friday to you, my friend, Senator Talent. I will tell you, when we were texting back and forth, I thought this was interesting when I was trying to get you back onto the air. This was earlier in the week. You said something that interested me, and you said, we don't know what's going to be going on this week, but I definitely would pray for President Trump. What did you mean by that? And happy Friday, by the way.
Yeah, sure. He has some very difficult decisions to make regarding, Iran. Now, when I say this, we are in a stronger position to protect American security in the Middle East than since I went to Washington in the early 90s. In other words, the president's policies to this point have promoted American security and peace in the Middle East. So I view what is happening in Iran basically as an opportunity. But he has to make some decisions about what he's going to do, how he's going to do it, and they're difficult decisions. I think when I was texting that to you, I was thinking to myself, to have to sit at the head of that table in the Situation Room and make these calls, it's just not very easy to do.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a good idea for us to pray for all of our presidents.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a delicate situation that we're dealing with in the Middle East. I have a lot of confidence in the Trump administration, and it's hopeful for the Iranian people and for the United States, but there's a lot at stake.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we just take one thing after another. Let me ask you something really quickly, though, about Minneapolis. And my goodness,
sure.
I was hoping last Friday, I was thinking, all right, by Monday we'll barely be talking about this because it's so isolated to one place. It's not even these protests aren't just simply erupting all around the country. This is like the worst attempt at George Floyding that I've seen in a long time. So it's not catching hold. But President Trump did say that he would invoke the Insurrection Act if these guys continued to foment violence. And Jacob Fry is clearly doing that. Governor Walz is clearly doing that. Ilhan Omar has been a little more quiet, probably for good reason. And so what do you think about that possibility?
Well, this is clearly building. Now, I guess what I should say, I tend to agree with what you were saying in the introduction. I think the American people see what's happening here. And so I think since it's not going to work politically, I kind of think the issue will be diffused a little bit going forward. But I will tell you, Jamie, I always talk about context when this comes up. We got to remember the Biden administration simply opened the border to, we don't know how many, 12, 15 million people, no vetting whatsoever, which was completely unprecedented. I mean, nobody had ever talked about doing that before, much less done it. Then we had all these blue states and cities announce that they were sanctuary cities, and we're not going to cooperate even as regards the illegals who had committed serious crimes. And there had been a little of that in the past, but basically unprecedented. And now their organizations are astroturfing and sending these people out to deliberately create confrontations with the ICE officials who have to go into the neighborhoods because they're not able to pick these people up at jails or prisons or courthouses or that sort of thing. And then they turn around and say, the administration's being divisive. When the whole point of everything they've been doing is to create division. So I think you're right. I think the American people are seeing through it. But it's extremely frustrating. And, Jamie, I can't emphasize enough. I mean, all my years in and around Washington, nobody ever proposed policies like this. Not Clinton, not Obama, not the Democrats in the Congress. never just opened the border to everybody, or then said, okay, we don't care what crimes they've committed, we're not going to help you deport them. And this is terrible, and it really needs to stop. I think it was punished in the last election, and I think it'll be punished in the next election as well.
Yeah, so I don't really understand how. I mean, there are some things that apparently we just have accepted and not really gone after, and that would be the sanctuary city. The sanctuary city, just by itself, is basically illegal. Correct?
Well, you can. Okay, so the state or local governments do not have to cooperate in assisting the federal government in enforcing its laws and its policies. They cannot obstruct it. And I agree with you. I think some of the things that Mayor Fry has been saying and Waltz has been saying are coming close to obstruction. Now, whether that's an insurrection act or whether that's simply obstructing the enforcement of federal laws, it's coming close to crimes. I mean, I'm not a prosecutor. I don't know the elements of those offenses. You cannot affirmatively attempt or use state authority to try and prevent the enforcement of federal law. Then you do get constitutional crises of the kind that you're talking about. It's why then you get Eisenhower send the 101st Airborne into Little Rock. So yeah, but again, they're doing this to support policies and the consequences of those policies that are very bad for the American people, and therefore have really been unprecedented. I mean, we had millions of people coming in, overwhelming social services, driving up the cost of housing, lowering wages for people, and then in addition, all the drug runners and the traffickers and the foreign agents as well. So, I mean, I get pretty worked up about it. I mean, nobody ever talked about this before until Biden got in.
Yeah. So I still go back to this idea that the sanctuary city on its face is an obstruction. I mean, it's not a matter. I mean, they may not be assisting, but it is an obstruction by its very nature. By its definition, it's an obstruction.
Well, there are Supreme Court cases which have held that the federal government cannot the state governments are sovereign to the extent that the federal government cannot take over and, in effect, command them to use their resources to support federal activity. And so, for example, if you got an administration in that was trying to enforce gun laws, you could not command the state of Missouri to use the highway patrol to do that. But at the same time, they cannot obstruct. The state cannot use its authorities or resources to obstruct federal investigation. But this was never an issue, Jamie. I mean, even states that, if you wanted to say, okay, for particular populations are seeking asylum or something, but I mean, who refuses to turn over like convicted or killers or drug traffickers to the federal government for deportation? What?
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't. Yeah, and then standing there and acting like you have the moral high ground in keeping these kind of people in American communities.
Yeah, is it my imagination, or does it seem like? And I just, and maybe I'm not paying attention, but I think I am. It's kind of interesting how some leading Democrats are pretty quiet about what is happening in Minneapolis for some reason, and I'm not quite sure whether it's just that they know that this fraud situation for Tim Walz and Jacob Fry and Ilhan Omar, and maybe even for the Democrat Party itself, is pretty serious, and so it seems like they're almost purposely avoiding.
I saw that fraud thing, the fraud thing. I mean, I could be a little more precise than I would describe the enormous amount of fraud. And I actually emailed a friend of mine because I've been thinking about this a little bit anyway. Jamie, I mean, for years and years, I'd thought that in order to deal with the debt, the federal deficit, that we were really going to have to look at how to deliver services like, for example, Medicare at substantially less cost. And I did not think we could get the money that we needed, get the savings we needed just out of waste, fraud, and abuse. But when I look at the amount that's been defrauded, just a relatively small state, right, Minnesota, I'm really now beginning to think that if we can get at this stuff, and I know the administration wants to do it, this is going to knock an awful lot off the deficit.
Oh, yeah.
Just money that's being looted. And I'm going to tell you, the deficit was so big, was always my thinking that, obviously it's worth doing. You get whatever you can, but you're not going to be able to get enough to make a difference. I'm now starting to think differently, and I think the Treasury Secretary does as well. You've seen what he's been saying about this, that they're really going to go after it. I think part of the reason is the administration saying, because the president wants, and we need to get this deficit substantially reduced. This would be a great way to do it. You don't have to worry about, changing eligibility or anything for Medicare or that sort of thing. You just get the fraudsters off the public dole.
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems to me, though, back to my question, though, Hakeem Jeffries hasn't said a word, and even some of the other people who are normally fire breathers in the Democrat Party have been really oddly quiet, even Chuck Schumer and some of these other individuals. And I'm trying to think about why they might be doing that, and I think that they know that there's trouble.
It's an election year.
Yeah.
And we're now in the election year. Look, the issue, if you want to think about it politically, and I am a politician, so I get that. I typically haven't, because I think there's just an urgent necessity, A, to get control of the border, which the administration has done, and then B, to deport as many of these people who've come over, particularly the ones who are the criminals, the troublemakers, et cetera, regardless of the politics of it. But I agree the politics of it is very good, and I think it's going to get better as we get closer and as people focus on the issue and have a chance to, sort through and separate fact from fiction. Because all that ICE is doing is what ICE has always done, which is to try and find and deport people who are here illegally, and particularly the ones who are here illegally and represent a direct threat to the people when they're here. They have to do it differently because they're not getting the kind of cooperation that they've gotten in the past.
Yeah.
So they have to be more visible in some of these neighborhoods. And the other thing, of course, is if you've got a community like Minneapolis that's declaring itself this big sanctuary, it's going to protect these criminals. Well, do you think the criminals are going to try and get to Minneapolis?
Yeah.
Well, sure.
Yeah. All right.
You're going to get more and more of them there.
And Jimmy, I know you're kind of on a little bit of a weekend outing of some sort. Do you have time to just kind of hang for another segment? Because I want to ask you about the delay in the Iran strikes, about Venezuela, and about Greenland, and just for another 10 minutes or so. Is that all right?
Yeah, we can do a quick one. Yeah.
All right, buddy. That sounds good. That's exactly what we'll do. Thank you. That's Jim Talent. It's Common Sense Radio. It's the Allman Report on News Talk STL. Jamie Allman here with you. It's the 3 Martini Lunch and the Fancy Friday. It's Common Sense Radio.
I want to do all the things your lungs do so well. I'm gonna bed into you like a cat beds into a female.
St. Louis's place to talk.
Freedom of speech is one of the anchors of our society.
News Talk STL.
The GeminiWealthGroup.com and Jeff Portman and his team ready to bring decades of expertise to you and your retirement. And folks, I got to tell you, I always say this, and I think this is something worthwhile to say. I've got good news and bad news. The good news is you might live 20, 30, 40 years even after your retirement. The bad news is you might live 20, 30, 40 years past retirement. And that's what we like to talk about at the Gemini Wealth Group, because you need to make sure that you are locked down with your golden years being comfortable and with you knowing exactly what you need to do in terms of paying for this, paying for that, and what you need to pay for, and making the most of your portfolio. So Jeff and his team will do that for you. What they do is they go in and diversify your investments, and they have a specialized plan to do that. And so what ultimately the goal is going to be that you're going to go into your retirement and never have to touch the main part of your retirement. You're basically able to live off your dividends. And that really honestly becomes great peace of mind for a lot of people. The fact of the matter is there are people, there are some people who can't wait to retire. Then there are other people who say, I really don't want to not have a paycheck, so I don't know what to do. And then they give you the permission slip to retire because they have it all taken care of at the Gemini Wealth Group, thegeminiwealthgroup.com. Proud sponsors, and all through 2026, proud sponsors of free common sense conservative radio.
There's only one place you can get pizza cooked over coals: Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley. Of course, Napoli Brothers has a great selection of pasta dishes. Between the pizza and pasta, trust me, you will not leave hungry. Then, a few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, a wide variety of quality cigars, each offering a unique smoke. That cigar, some premium whiskey, all you need to do is enjoy. Lit Cigar Lounge and Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, Chesterfield Valley.
This is Larry Connor's commentary on News Talk STL.
One of the most frightening calls for law enforcement: officer down, officer needs help. Everything is dropped to get to that officer, that brother or sister in uniform, but not in Minneapolis, at least if they are an ICE officer. Democrats have ordered local and state law enforcement, don't do anything to help the ICE agents if they're under attack. And keep in mind, recently they released something like 470 criminals from jail. These would be rapists, bandits, child molesters, and other violent, illegal aliens. And they're not going to be doing anything to help ICE agents if they're under attack. So the officer calls for help, waits, no one comes. There is an Insurrection Act of 1807. The Insurrection Act is a U.S. federal law that allows the president to nationally deploy the U.S. military, to federalize the National Guard units. We are at a point now in Minneapolis, if that's their attitude in protecting law enforcement on the ground, it's time for the president to enact the Insurrection Act of 1807.
Get more Larry Connors on Larry Connors USA.
Tonight at 6 on News Talk STL. So many ways to listen to News Talk STL. Enable our Alexa skill.
Hello.
Hey, Alexa.
Yes, I'm listening.
Play News Talk STL.
Welcome to News Talk STL, conservative talk radio for St. Louis.
Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Fancy Friday to all of you and yours. It's Common Sense Radio, and it is a 3-martini lunch. Jim Talent hanging over for another short little Q&A because President Trump is now taken off to Florida, and before that he announced that he was delaying a decision on what to do with Iran, and that, I guess, presumably was including the possibility of some airstrikes of some sort. Apparently there were some other Arab countries involved in this decision to delay it. I don't know. Jim Talent might know, however. Jimmy, what do you think about all that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question and explained it, because, as you know, I've been on the road and I did not see that he had formally announced he's delayed a decision. I did know that the Gulf states that the Saudis and the UAE and others were trying to pursue a diplomatic alternative, and we're urgently asking the president to give that some space and some room. So I guess this does not surprise me. Now, as you know, the protests have been, at least at this point, suppressed, but I don't think the regime is going to be able to continue that indefinitely because they've really deployed almost all their security forces. So I think the collapse of the regime is inevitable, but I've been saying for some time it may not be imminent. We can talk about that if you want.
Yeah.
I think the president will eventually end up striking them in some way, shape, or form, in part because he said he was going to do it if they killed people, and they've killed a lot of people. And I have decided after a year that when Donald Trump threatens something, he does it. So, but yeah, I can see him postponing it.
Yeah. So is as a conservative, I when we talk about airstrikes on other countries and invasions, and I get really uncomfortable, to tell you the truth. I understand when Israel struck Iran, I got it with kind of our support or what have you, but the actual U.S. airstrikes concern me sometimes.
Yeah, well, when countries have consistently made themselves adversaries or enemies of our security and our interests abroad, my approach to foreign policy is, okay, you want to be an adversary, we're going to treat you like an adversary. I mean, I
Right.
do say this to you, Jane. I was a what they call a foreign policy realist and an America firster in terms of how I approach these things. Before President Trump burst on the scene 10 years ago. So I don't have a problem. Now, what I never want to do is put our people at risk or sacrifice lives and treasure for ends that don't justify it. So, I don't want to, and usually, if you're going to put boots on the ground for long periods of time, you need a really, really good reason. But surgical strikes to protect our people and our interests, I'm fine with it. I was fine when Obama was droning these people. I mean, they're out to get us.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And so I just I don't see any reason we need to sit back and take that. And I've been very pleased at what Trump did against the nuclear program and Maduro, the narco terrorists killing our people, and supporting the Cubans and the Chinese. So I'm fine with it. But it's one of the reasons I said we all ought to keep President Trump in our thoughts, because these are difficult decisions to make on a tactical level.
Yeah.
I suspect one of the reasons he's delaying is he wants the USS Lincoln, I think it is, but the aircraft carrier to get in theater.
Right.
He wants to make sure we have enough interceptors because, the Iranians may try and shoot at some of our people. I don't think they'll be able to hurt any of us. So he's probably figuring, you know what, I want to get the preparations complete anyway, and then we'll see if they come around diplomatically. But the regime is not going to do that.
Yeah. Well,
I heard the regime you'll like this, Jamie. I heard a guy describe the regime now. They said they're like zombies. They're ideologically dead and they're financially dying, but they can still stagger around and eat a bunch of brains before somebody gets them. Yeah.
Well, and I think at one point too, the thing that I really love about this administration is I trust every single one of their instincts. So when when President Trump says something and is doing something, I don't apply the cookie cutter type of balls and strikes nonsense to what he's doing, because I trust him. I voted for this. So I don't care whether it's ICE or whether it's Maduro or what have you. And even the issue of Greenland. Now, that is something that I think a lot of people don't understand, just how important Greenland is to our security. And strategically and geographically and everything else. So, I just, I don't really sit back and navel gaze like a lot of these salon Republicans do with President Trump's actions. I'm like, go for it. I voted for you, so whatever you say, man, I'm good.
Well, and he has a record of producing good results. So I'm the same way. I give him a lot of running room, is the way I put it. Look, he's the president. He's going to be responsible for the consequences of the decisions he makes. But so far, those consequences have been pretty good. And I should say this to those in your audience who like you feel a level of discomfort about this, and I do too. I mean, whenever you have to trigger a military option, there's risk, certainly to the servicemen and women. I think here it's limited. But President Trump, the tools he uses overwhelmingly are economic and diplomatic tools. I mean, the military is there in the background to give energy and emphasis to the civilian tools. I mean, we could talk for 30 minutes about how he uses economic power to increase our influence around the world and protect our interests, and diplomatic as well. I mean, they just announced they want to go to phase 2 of the Gaza peace plan. He's constantly, he does a lot of personal diplomacy. The last president to do that was H.W. Bush, the first Bush.
Right.
So he uses military power sparingly and effectively to reinforce the civilian tools of national influence, which is what he relies on most of the time. And that's what all good presidents do, by the way. I mean, Reagan was the same way.
Yeah. One quick thing, just from a standpoint of curiosity, which I think is really, really great, and that is when it came time for this raid that plucked Maduro, I was hearing some things about how this really happened, and it was some pretty crazy underdog type of stuff, man. I mean, I heard that it was basically 20 guys who went in. They had guns that shot like 300 rounds a second or a minute or something, and they had these supersonic type of sonic weapons that like made people's ears bleed. I mean, it was just astounding, that operation.
I saw that the social media post as well.
Yeah,
that's the kind of look. It was a tremendously well planned and executed operation where we used intel, really good intel, which had developed over the course of months, and joint action by our special operation forces in the Navy and others. And the president's right. This is the kind of thing that we do very well that very few other militaries can do. Probably the Israelis to some extent, and that's about it. Now, whether this report is true or not, Jamie, I read it as well. I'm going to wait to see it confirmed. Which it probably, and in fairness, if it is true, they'll never confirm.
I was about to say, I hope it's never confirmed, because I don't want people to know about it. I'm sure the Chinese have their own little thing going on too. I just saw that they were developing robot soldiers. So these things that basically you could send out into the battlefield, and they're basically just robots. That doesn't surprise me at all.
It's possible that that's a little disinformation.
Yeah.
And I don't mean for nefarious purposes. That's to cause our adversaries to wonder whether we actually have these capabilities. But we do have a whole lot of capabilities people don't know about. The cyber realm, the ability to jam airspace. Like it's one of the things I thought, I'm going to have to go, my friend. I'm on a personal trip. But I'll finish by saying this. I thought one of the things the president might do, and he still may do it, is ensure that we open up the internet in Iran. And we're really good at jamming the jammers. Okay, so if we want to do that, we can do it. And this is not the end of this protest season or this issue with Iran.
Yeah, that's for sure.
He's doing something. When he says he's still delaying, there's some strings he's pulling. So
yeah, well,
stay buckled up.
Thank you so much. And I know I didn't hear this in the background, but was that Brenda shaking the keys right there for a second?
You know what it was? It was me drinking a Diet Coke, and I was chewing a little ice. You caught me.
Oh, I just thought maybe when you said you had to go, I was thinking, well, because I know you do have to go, but it's a personal trip.
We're actually in Cincinnati visiting my daughter and son-in-law and grandson, and they are like waiting lunch for me. So
gotcha. All right, well, buddy, listen, I appreciate the generosity of your time, And I hope you and your family have a blessed weekend. And thank you so much for taking the time out, Jimmy.
Same to you, Jim.
Okay, that is Jim Talent in Cincinnati with the family. Yeah, you know how that feels, right? When people are looking at their watches and things like that, shaking keys. Hey, there's a woman out on the internet, and I normally don't dabble in too many conspiracy theories, but she has this really wild theory about the ballroom. And she says it might be a ballroom, but basically it's a lot more, and it's what's happening underneath the ballroom that she thinks is crazy. So I'm gonna hit you with that on the other side of this. It's a fancy Friday, so let's play around a little bit. It's Common Sense Radio.
The Democrat Party is going to have to go back toward the center.
News, analysis, and opinion.
I've never called a talk show before, but this just irked me.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Hanson's Tree Service. Folks, let me tell you something. We're going to be in a situation where we have, listen, wintertime, I was talking to a guy yesterday about he had somebody who was a landscaper or somebody doing something for him. And he said, it seems that based on this person's landscaping history, that it seems like winter comes a little later and stays a little longer. And I know in St. Louis that can be true because I know in March it can snow. Like my birthday's in March, and I remember as a little kid having my birthday off of school because there were like 3 feet of snow. And I've also taken the kids on Easter egg hunts when it's flirting. So we understand that. And that means the blustery season can go on and on and on, even if it seems pretty mild now. That's why you need to have your trees deadwooded and pruned. Hanson's Tree Service is the way to go. They have been supporting free, common sense, conservative radio for 20 years now. Originally, it was the late, great Jeff Hanson. And now Chad has taken over and just doing gangbusters and coming up with all these great ideas to advance the dream that Jeff Hanson created. Tree takedowns are very simple. They're great at what they do with that. You need to make sure you get a tree. If it's stressed, have Jesse or some of the other tree doctors come out, check it out. They can tell you whether or not that thing needs to come down. And if you're like, I don't know, I'm going to wait, can't afford it. Well, there's still the best price performers in the land when it comes to taking trees down, but still they'll allow you to finance it because they don't want you to make the choice of, well, do I pay this amount of money or do I crush my car or my person? And the choice needs to be you get the tree taken down. So Chad will make that happen for you, and they do great work. Also, think about mulch season and think about spring because spring is going to be here. And don't forget, they have the best mulch that you're going to find anywhere in the land, all different cuts, all different colors. That's Hanson's Tree Service, hansonstree.com.
Jeffco Patriot Radio.
Hey guys, Jefferson County Councilman Billy Crow here from Jeffco Patriot Radio. On behalf of Tim Jones and I just want to thank you for making Jeffco Patriot Radio the #1 listened to show on Sundays here on News Talk STL, where we dive into all the things happening in and around Jefferson County. Check Tim Jones and I out on Jeffco Patriot Radio this and every Sunday at high noon here on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
Jeffco Patriot Radio.
If you're waking up tired, stiff, or feeling like your mattress turned against you, it's time for an upgrade. And right now, Snooze Mattress and Wellness in Chesterfield has the biggest deals of the season. Save up to $900 on Stearns & Foster adjustable sets and up to $700 on Beauty Rest Black. No appointment needed. Walk in, get your personalized sleep assessment. It's real tech, zero guessing, and get matched to the sleep your body's been begging for. If you're ready to stop battling your mattress, come say yes to better rest. Snooze Mattress and Wellness in Chesterfield. Sleep restored, life renewed.
Why leave your company's story to chance? In today's digital world, video content isn't just an option. It's essential for your success. At Blue Ocean Media Group, we've spent decades crafting compelling visual stories for businesses just like yours. From concept to completion, our award-winning team transforms your vision into powerful video content that connects with your audience and drives results. Don't trust your brand to amateurs. Partner with Blue Ocean Media Group. Visit blueoceanmediagroup.com today, and let's bring your story to life.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
Governor Kehoe is focused on eliminating income tax for Missourians. We'll ask Congressman Bob Onder if Missouri voters will approve it at 420.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 4 on News Talk STL.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Common Sense Radio. It's the Allman Report on News Talk STL. Want to let you guys know that probably somewhere around 7 o'clock or so in that vicinity, I'll be hanging out at Santino's Whiskey and Cigars right there off of 55, the Imperial exit there. Let me give you the website. It's Santino'sCigarCocktails.com. You can get the exact directions there. But I'll be there if you want to come and hang out and have a drink or something. Mike will be there. Try some of their Sicilian cuisine, why don't you? So we'll have a little Allman Report, Radio Free Allman, Common Sense Radio, later happy hour. How does that sound? I go down there a little earlier. I have a home showing that I want to do later on, and then we'll pop down to Santino's. So, see you there. So I talked earlier about the airport. I mean, this situation, it's no wonder. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong. If you're not picking up on the same thing I am, and that is, it looks like Democrats, a lot of leading Democrats who normally won't ever shut up, are super quiet. Is that my imagination, or am I just not paying attention? Like, usually you can't turn a TV on without seeing this idiot Hakeem Jeffries, and he hasn't said a word. And even Ilhan Omar is kind of quieted down a little bit. It's very, very interesting. Because I think they know something's up, and they know eventually this clown show with Antifa on the streets of Minneapolis, that they're not good. They can't be out there forever, and they're not going to be. And nobody is joining them around the country. It has no legs whatsoever. So it's going to die. And my prediction last Friday was wrong. I said by Monday we won't even be talking about it, and that's all we've been talking about this week. So maybe I just missed it by a week. I missed the death of the clown show by a week. Meanwhile, this is crazy. According to an internal email circulated by the Minneapolis city attorneys, this was yesterday morning, the Minneapolis City Attorney's Office, I saw this news conference yesterday with all these people with, this one woman, I saw her yesterday. She's carrying around a flag that is obviously from a coffin of some sort of drape, and it's in that wooden triangular case, you know. And yesterday she was carrying the same damn thing around. So these people are obviously actors. These people are obviously paid actors, because yesterday I was watching her carrying this flag. Presumably, you know what the deal is. You know, my father was a veteran, or my husband was a veteran. He died in the war and died for our freedom, and now you guys are taking it away. You get the drift, right? But she's been running that thing around. She's been holding that thing for the last 2 days. It's so fake. It's crazy. Anyway, this email invited staff to a midday healing circle designed for quiet, supportive connection. followed by an appearance from Therapy Goats beginning at noon. This Minneapolis City Attorney's Office emailed staff, invited them to a healing circle with Therapy Goats. While Democrats fan the flames against ICE agents, city staff are being offered quiet reflection time with goats. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a therapy goat, but apparently that's what they have. Did you? I mean, I knew that back in the day. I guess that they're showing like a baby goat. I'll read you the email from Kristen. As a reminder, Therapy Goats will also be in and available beginning at noon, and folks are welcome to stop by at any point. Participation is entirely optional. Well, that's nice of you. You're forcing people to hang out with a goat for therapy. And I know goats are kind of cute. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, we'd go to Grant's farm, and then we would feed the goats with the baby bottle. You know, that was always really super cool. You know, I don't know how I remember feeling really so amazing when I was feeding a goat with a baby bottle. And I guess it was because it was so unusual to me, and it's kind of so cool that this goat is like, I'm feeding a goat. But I didn't get any kind of therapeutic benefit from that, but I don't know, maybe they're doing that. If you know anything about therapy goats, let me know. This is what I was talking about earlier. There are some numbers that are being crunched as there is another investigation by a group called Data Republican and a guy named Walter Kurt. And they are following the money this time regarding Somali fraud cash going through the Minneapolis airport. And you guys know about a week and a half ago, I played you the soundbite from the TSA agent, the former TSA agent, who talked about seeing suitcases full of cash going through the airport. And occasionally they would stop the people, question them, and do whatever, and then they would just move on. But according to some reports, that more over the period of 2 years, they moved roughly $700 million through the airport. They basically moved 7.7 metric tons of cash if they were using $100 bills. Somalis were taking $1 million duffel bag through the airport every single day for 2 years. And we had that confirmed about a week and a half ago from the TSA agent. We don't know where exactly the money was going, whether that was going overseas or whether it was going to another area of the country. But why was Minneapolis so attractive to this Somali money and even Somali fraudsters who were not even from Minneapolis? Well, the Somalis run the airport. They're the ground crews, the airport staff, and for the most part, they are TSA. So what they're finding is into the Metropolitan Airports Commission that is in charge of the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport, Governor Tim Walz appointed a Somali to the airport board. He appointed another Somali to the airport board in 2019. And then another Somali was appointed to the airport board in 2018 by then St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter. So basically, the Minneapolis airport is essentially being run by Somalis, which is why they're allowing and seeming to allow all this money to wander through there unmolested. Now, that TSA agent, I played you that soundbite about a week and a half ago. I can't remember exactly the day. But she was not a Somali and didn't indicate that Somalis controlled the entirety of TSA, but they do. I can't remember where I was and it might have been in San Diego or someplace when I was flying through. It was within the last couple of years or so. And I remember, I mean, I wish I could remember it, but I remember like this Somali family, like it looked like they were all relatives and stuff, ran this restaurant and bar. You know, it's the one you sit at, and then you basically use a QR code and you order through the QR code, and then it's brought to you. And I was sitting there because, to tell you the truth, I was kind of like interested because I was one of the women working there was kind of attractive. I'm like, check her out. But I was I wound up like, you know, because they had accents, and I asked like where they're from and that kind of stuff, and they're one big Somali family running the place. So it's not like every single Somali you see is some kind of fraudster or whatever. But we don't need to qualify that. We know what's going on there. So it's not like, you know, it's not like we can't talk about fraud and be accused of indicting the entirety of every single Somali refugee. But it is a problem. And the fact that they're running the airports, and they're involved in a lot of airports across the country. They're the ones who do a lot of these restaurant and bars, like I told you about there, and those kiosks and things like that, those little storefronts. Have you noticed that there are a lot of people who are not American born who run these things? I've always kind of been curious about that, but I couldn't tell you why that is, but that's kind of odd that there are so many foreign entities that run stuff at our airports. And I'm not saying they're, you know, going to blow up planes or do whatever, but that seems to be the case. All right, coming up, people, this is really kind of crazy. And normally I'm not going to sit here and dabble in conspiracy theories, but this woman seemingly has seemingly kind of connected all these dots. And I kind of actually hope that she's right, that there's so much more to this ballroom than you could possibly imagine. The ballroom part of it is like 10% of the reason that it's going to be built. And she's not a left-wing crazy or a right-wing person, whatever, but I'm going to introduce you to this idea that she has on the other side of this in the 1 o'clock hour. You're here on a fancy Friday. I'm so happy you are. It's Common Sense Radio. It's the 3 Martini Lunch, everybody.
John Beal Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Beal to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Beal has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Beal.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness One. Wellness One is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common-sense science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on Newstalk STL. And you can visit us at inhstl.com. That's inhstl.com.
Hey, it's Vic Porcelli here with our great friend Chris Cooper from Serenity Wealth Management. Hi, Chris.
How are you, Vic?
I don't want to put anybody else down, but that when you go up and visit you at Serenity Wealth, your place looks like home.
So a lot of financial advisory offices, they have, you know, the big mahogany desk or the big marble entryways and things like that. The stock market channel on the TV when you walk in the door, right? That doesn't really drive a good conversation. Good financial guidance and advice starts with a good conversation. People are nervous. People are afraid to talk about finances, right? And so you can see a little standoffish. Well, my objective is to try to have a good, casual conversation. By having those conversations about life, goals, objectives. It's what makes me understand what our financials are supposed to fund.
So if somebody does want to have a good conversation, how do they do that? How do they find you?
Our website is the best way to do that because you can get all the information you need, understand where we are, get a little bit more information, all that. SerenityWealthNow.com.
Reach out to Chris and Stacy today at SerenityWealthNow.com.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors, LLC.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
Breaking news at Town Hall. I'm Bob Agnew in Washington. At the White House today, President Trump doubling down on his insistence the U.S. needs to gain control of Greenland.
I may put a tariff on countries if they don't go along with Greenland because we need Greenland for national security, so I may do that.
And frequent Trump critic, Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, says it's not a good idea.
When you ask the American people whether or not they think it is a good idea for the United States to acquire Greenland, the vast majority, some 75%, will say, we do not think that that is a good idea.
The president has been insisting that for national security reasons, the U.S. should control Greenland, a self-governing territory, which is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and Denmark is vehemently opposed to the idea. Stocks been wavering on Wall Street as the first week of corporate earnings season closes out, with the markets trading at or near record high levels. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average back into positive territory after some fluctuations. It's up about 5 points. The NASDAQ right now up by 25, and the S&P 500 up by about 6. This year's Nobel Peace Prize winner paid a visit to the White House on Thursday.
Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado met with President Trump at the White House. The president had been lobbying for the Peace Prize. It went to Machado.
I presented the President of the United States the medal.
The president confirmed on social media Machado had left the medal for him to keep, and he said it was an honor to meet her. Machado says she presented the medal
as a recognition for his unique commitment with our freedom.
The two discussed Venezuela's future, despite the president's doubts about Machado's leadership. Ed Donahue, Washington.
More on these stories at townhall.com.
Chuck McDowell here with Wesley Financial Group. My 78-year-old friend Linda called me yesterday. She bought a $40,000 timeshare in Nashville. She was told it was a great investment and that he would personally book all her vacations. All lies. She called our sales rep, Chris, the next morning at 4:57 a.m. to cancel, and she was told it was too late. You had your chance yesterday. Another lie. She has 10 days in Tennessee. I am in a war with the timeshare industry because people keep buying their lies, and they don't want me to help you. If you need a timeshare, I'm sure one of the 3,500 people that call my office weekly would love to give you one of theirs. Or go online and pay $1 for it. But stop paying $40,000 for lies. It's time to stop the insanity. Don't wait another day.
Call Wesley now for your free timeshare exit kit. 800-364-7711. That's 800-364-7711. 800-364-7711.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Rodney and Jen Wallner and the entire Wallner home selling team at Berkshire Hathaway. Call them today at 314-810-SOLD. 314-810-SOLD. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
Not as cold today with a high in the mid-40s this afternoon, but late afternoon into the evening, another front is pushing through with an opportunity for some snow showers and maybe even some moderate snowfall rates in the early evening hours. And then it's just about spot flurries overnight tonight and into tomorrow. It's definitely going to be colder tomorrow, highs in the 20s and single-digit wind chills. I'm First Alert KMOV meteorologist Kent Earhart.
2026, a great time to visit Lit Cigar Lounge. The Lit Cigar Facebook has numerous events from tastings to music. My main reason for going to Lit is always quality cigars, premium whiskeys. Odds are we'll see each other at Lit Cigar Lounge. A few doors down, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta. Get a pizza baked over coals. Excellent crust and flavor. Or choose one of the many great pasta dishes. You won't leave hungry. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta and Lit Cigar Lounge in the Chesterfield Valley.
Hi, I'm Dr. Alan Link, owner of the Dental Link.
You've heard ads about teeth in a day, but did you know that you will be chewing on plastic, acrylic teeth? Here at the Dental Link, we can give you porcelain crown and bridge teeth utilizing mini dental implants that function much more like real teeth at about half the cost. Plus, mini dental implants are less invasive, less painful, and your recovery time is much shorter. Give us a call at 314-794-6464 or simply visit us today at thedentallink.com.
Are you ready to take a totally tubular trip down memory lane? Join us for the ultimate 80s and 90s trivia night, raising funds for the Nick Schroer for State Senate campaign. Dust off your neon, grab your friends, and test your knowledge on all the classics, from mixtapes to sitcoms, boy bands to blockbuster hits, and maybe even some political questions. It's all happening Saturday night, January 31st at the Elks Lodge in O'Fallon, Mo. Reserve your table now by emailing nick@nickschroer.com.
Hey, it's Susie Moore. If new flooring makes you think hassle, think again, because Michael's Flooring is changing the game. For over 30 years, Michael's has been locally owned and trusted for quality, variety, and amazing service. Whether it's carpet, hardwood, laminate, luxury vinyl, or ceramic tile, their expert team makes installing new floors exciting, not stressful. That's why customers keep coming back. Visit Michael's Flooring at St. Peter's, Starting Prairie, Creve Coeur, or online at igotfloored.com. That's igotfloored.com.
If you have a phone, you have a radio. Download the all-new News Talk STL app.
Love the all-new app.
And listen anytime, anywhere.
Is that my turn? Okay, sure. I'll go ahead and do it then.
I saw the light, I've been baptized by the fire in your touch and the flame in your eyes. I'm born to love again, I'm a brand new man.
Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Fancy Friday to all of you and yours. It's Common Sense Radio, and it is January 16th, which means it is my eldest son, Ethan's birthday. He's 36 years old. Can you believe that? My hero. He turned 20 in Iraq back in 2010. Got his combat action badge there, and really super proud of him. And now he is the husband of a wonderful woman named Julia and a father of two sweet little girls, my grandchildren, my granddaughters, Claire and Lila, who is just about a month old now, born in December. So really excited about that. Going to see them next weekend, actually, so that's good. But happy birthday to Ethan. Super proud of you, and super proud to be Ethan's father. That is for sure. All right, so this is interesting, and I really don't care, for instance, if it is true, because the headline on this is very interesting, and the headline is, Trump isn't building a ballroom. I'm thinking, that's interesting. Then what exactly is he building? So it's this woman who is on, it's called the Dre dossier. And she doesn't really seem to be partisan by any stretch of the imagination. She just seems to be telling it like, I mean, it doesn't seem like she has an attitude about it. I want you to hear what she has to say. It's like 15 minutes. I'll probably not play you the whole thing. But she says basically when Trump announced a $300 million ballroom at the White House, something went off in my brain. The pattern recognition part started tingling. 90,000 square feet, $300 million, underground construction at a secure government facility. And then she started to do some of this kind of checking on data centers and all this other stuff. And this is her bit here. Let me see. Hold on. Yeah. There we
a thesis of what I think is actually being built, and that video got taken down on my TikTok after about 8 million views, so I re-uploaded it here. And if you haven't seen that one yet, I recommend going over and watching that because it gives you a good basis for where we're starting out from. But I wanted to follow up on my theory, okay? Because in the original video, while I had some solid architectural analysis from Andrew Kerr, it was mostly based off of like a gut instinct, you know, and my own pattern recognition. And since then, I have been digging deep, scouring the web across databases and looking for records, and I have come back with actual receipts, like some actual verifiable public record receipts. And now my theory is
Yeah, I don't know why it's you know what's crazy is that anyway, I'll bring this to you because I think what's happening is somehow it was like cut off and I don't know why. But I will let you know how it's going here.
Trump is not building a ballroom.
Let's see how this goes.
I feel like is obvious. I made a video about this a few weeks ago, giving a thesis of what I think is actually being built, and that video got taken down on my TikTok after about 8 million views, so I re-uploaded it here. And if you haven't seen that one yet, I recommend going over and watching that because it gives you a good basis for where we're starting out from. But I wanted to follow up on my theory, okay? Because in the original video, while I had some solid architectural analysis from Andrew Kerr, it was mostly based off of like a gut instinct, you know, and my own pattern recognition. And since then, I have been digging deep, scouring the web across databases and looking for records, and I have come back with actual receipts, like some actual verifiable public record receipts. And now my theory is stronger than ever, okay? Because I know that Trump is not building a ballroom. He's building an underground data center, and I have the receipts now to prove it. But really quick, if you want to read all of the sources and the documentation for yourself from this video, then they're all going to be linked at the bottom of my Substack, the Dre Dossier.
So she's got a Substack called the Dre Dossier. And she believes that what is really happening here is that President Trump and the gang, they're building like a data center below the ground at the White House. And, you know, when I hear about that, when I think about that, I'm thinking, well, that sounds pretty cool. I'm glad. Because what really is the scene here and the scene she's trying to set here is that somehow the ballroom is being built, but, this is kind of like almost like a James Bond, right? So the ballroom's being built, but there is something more to it. Like it's not just a ballroom. And they're utilizing this time and this space to actually build something larger and bigger and everything else. And it's kind of odd because you notice that people have stopped bitching about it. Now, I don't know whether that's just the news cycle or that's just how things go, these days that the news cycle is such that, people just drop things and move on, or whether or not they kind of suddenly have the wink, wink, this is what's going on, now shut up.
And that's going to be in the description below. And your support means the world to me, so please like this video and subscribe to my channel because TikTok is slowly going to the bad place, and I'm trying to build my presence here on YouTube so that I can keep doing this kind of work.
Let's move on,
so,
Chicky Poo.
Sincerely, thank you all
Let's do it.
so
Chop,
much.
chop.
And with that, let's get into it. So you're probably thinking, okay, well, where did you even come up with this idea, right? And to that I would say, well, where does one come up with any evil genius idea? Larry Ellison, of course, my nemesis. You see, a few months back, I was doing a deep dive on Larry Ellison and his relationship with Israel and the war in Gaza. And it was during that research I came across something about Oracle building these underground data centers in Jerusalem in 2021. See, they were 9 stories deep under solid bedrock, about 160 feet underground, and designed to survive missile strikes. I mean, they were completely invisible from satellites. See, Israel needed data sovereignty, a place where their most sensitive military data could live that was physically unhackable and under complete government control. And when you're running these classified military operations, intelligence gathering, or government AI systems, you can't just have that data sitting in some commercial cloud that might be in another country or vulnerable to attack. And after learning all of that, I remember thinking to myself, all right, well, we're going to just go ahead and put a pin in this for now, right? Like, this is all really fascinating, but I don't know what to do with any of this information, but I'm sure that it'll come in handy later. And later in handy did it come, because fast forward a few months and I'm reading about Trump's new ballroom announcement, and that pattern recognition side of my brain starts tingling. Why, you ask? Well, let me just read the specs out loud to you, okay? Because Oracle's underground facilities in Jerusalem were 90,000 square feet and cost around
And by the way, this isn't some like some kind of anti-Zionist screed or whatever. She's just saying that Oracle has a lot of these data centers. They're underground data centers and things like that. And so and she's citing the one in Jerusalem. So this isn't some, again, this woman is not necessarily partisan by any stretch of the imagination, but it is interesting nonetheless. And actually, I kind of hope it's true.
$319 million. Trump's ballroom is about 90,000 square feet and $300 million and climbing. Curious. And then on January 21st, 2025, you have Trump's first full day in office, and Larry Ellison is standing next to him and Sam Altman, and they're giving this White House announcement about Project Stargate. Now, I'm not kidding when I say I could write an entire dissertation on January 21st, because they gave us so much information in that announcement that I feel like, quite frankly, many of us just glazed over. And I've broken it down ad nauseum in other videos and over on my Substack, but the short version is this. Project Stargate is this $500 billion AI infrastructure initiative for government operations, defense intelligence, and consolidating federal data across agencies. Because all of these AI initiatives Trump and his team keep launching need infrastructure. They need servers, power, cooling, and security. And then you look over to who's donating to Trump's ballroom project, right? And the coincidences just keep stacking up on one another. And so I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, if this is actually what's happening, right? If this is actually what's being built, then there's got to be some evidence somewhere. Like, you can't just build an underground data center without leaving any paper trail. And so I start digging, right? Because the first thing I want to know is who's actually building this thing. So their lead contractor is Clark Construction. And I went to their website to see what kind of projects they normally work on. And under their critical facilities division, here's what they publicly list. So you've got National Geospatial Intelligence Agency campus, a CISA cybersecurity headquarters, UCENTCOM headquarters at MacDill Air Force Base. I'm reading all of this thinking, okay, so these guys build some serious government facilities. Like, these are no joke. But then I'm thinking, okay, well, if they're this comfortable touting these publicly listed, high security projects, then what aren't they listing?
So what's interesting too, and this is actually really fascinating. Like, this chick clearly has she has a lot of time on her hands, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's really interesting because you remember that about a week and a half ago or so, or was it 2 weeks ago, where President Trump fired the architect or did whatever. And who knows whether or not that was really like a real thing or whether that was just something where it's kind of like, well, this was supposed to happen.
So I keep digging a little further, right? I'm going through these different government contract registries, procurement records, that kind of thing. And then bingo, I found some redacted contracts for Clark Construction, some top secret contracts, it looks like. And you'll never guess who they're for. Well, I mean, we can't guess because they're redacted, but I mean the type of job they're for. Guess what kind of job they're for. If you guessed data centers, you'd be correct. And it's not even like one or two of these kinds of contracts I found, right? Not even three. I found six redacted contracts for data centers that they built around the US. And again, I'll link all of these contracts in my Substack if you want to go check them out, but they're just listed as literally confidential client data centers 1 through 6.
And so keep in mind too that she put this video up on TikTok, or at least a part of it, and TikTok took it down. And I don't know why. Who knows? I know that TikTok isn't always exceedingly careful, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff on TikTok that is still up there, and you're like, why is this still up there? But this is interesting.
And the client names are obviously classified because the facilities themselves, I'm sure, are classified. I mean, Clark's own description of their work says that they focus on security and survivability, reliability and redundancy, and complex critical facilities. So the company whose specialty is building classified data centers for clients that they can't even name is building the ballroom. Okay, sure, Jan, sure. And here's where it gets even more interesting, because Clark Construction holds a NAVFAC contract, Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command, with a $950 million ceiling. And the way these contracts work is admittedly very clever. So the total value of these contracts is public, but the individual task orders, like the actual work that's being done, that can be considered classified, which means they can hide the true value, cost, and scope of projects by funneling them through these pre-existing military construction contracts.
And so here's the thing, and I understand that she thinks that she's kind of blowing the lid off of things or whatever, but you would expect that if they're going to do something like this, they're also going to do something else. Like, this isn't, like, if this is a hidden data center or whatever, I'm happy about it and not disturbed by it. I'm glad that they're doing something else aside from the ballroom, and the ballroom is just kind of like a pretense. Although we do know that there's good reason why a ballroom is being built, and President Trump has explained that, because right now there's no place to have any kind of dignitary events and that kind of stuff of any size or any scope. But I would expect that if they're going to do something like this and engage in this project the way they are, that they would actually go for it and do some other stuff. And I'm glad about it.
So not only do they specialize in classified data centers, but they have a mechanism to hide what they're actually building. And then on December 4th, something pretty wild happened. Trump fired his ballroom architect. His name was James McCreary, and he was this classical architect who designs these beautiful churches and historic buildings, designing buildings like the Cathedral of the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Supreme Court gift shop. I mean, say what you will about the guy, but he's got range. But alas, Trump replaced him with a different architect, a guy by the name of Shalom Baranes. When I say I went to look this man up and my jaw dropped to the floor, so a little background on him. After 9/11, when the Pentagon needed to be rebuilt and hardened against future attacks, they hired Shalom Baranes. Yeah, this man designed the post-9/11 hardening project for the Pentagon, the secure wedges, the skiffs, the bomb-resistant architecture. This was all Shalom. And skiffs, by the way, are sensitive compartment information facilities. They have
and of course, you would expect that to be part of the ballroom construction. Like, you're not just going to create a ballroom construction like you would a home addition. This is the White House, after all, and you are building basically a secure facility. The White House is technically a secure facility, and I'm not quite sure whether there are technically skiffs in the White House. Actually, there might be in some other areas of governmental buildings, but you'd expect that they would want to add as much as they can to the ballroom and to this so-called secure facility. So this is good.
Electromagnetically shielded rooms for classified intelligence work and are built to survive missile attacks. And it's important you know what skiffs are, because this comes back into play a little later on. And his portfolio doesn't stop there. It gets a lot more intense, with DHS headquarters, Treasury building modernization, the GSA headquarters secure facility, the CISA cybersecurity headquarters that, yes, Clark Construction also built. Yeah, so these guys have rendezvoused together before. And at this point, I wanted to see if I could take a peek at what was happening on the ground. So, with my last remaining week of my free Planet Labs subscription, I looked through some satellite imagery, and what I saw astounded me. And I saw that these flatbed trucks had been photographed delivering these massive steel caissons to the site. Now, from what I understand about caissons is that they are these huge cylindrical retaining structures, basically. You use them for deep underground construction. They're designed very specifically to hold back soil and water pressure whenever you're going way deep underground. So you wouldn't use them for just standard foundation. And then I saw this heavy lift crane that was like permanently anchored into a concrete pad. I mean, that seemed to be for some long duration construction involving heavy structural materials and lifts from a deep excavation pit. And
So I don't know what her motivation is here necessarily. I don't think it's really to call President Trump a liar or to act as if there's something really nefarious going on. But I think what she is getting at, and especially with these caissons, as she says, that these are the things for deep underground, whatever, you would expect that actually they would want to have a bunker in the White House. And technically there kind of already is one. I think that's where Cheney was at the time. but you want to build something that was a lot more opulent and also updated to the point where you are meeting the demands for security that are part of the ever-developing weaponry of our enemies. So, I think this is good news. I'm not quite sure whether she doesn't seem to be saying, yeah, see, and they're secretly doing this, and Trump's a liar, and this is not really a ballroom. I think she's just kind of being intriguing. I don't know. Maybe that's maybe I'm picking up on something wrong, but I'm happy to hear this, really.
And all of this brought me to my next question, which is if this is actually going to be a data center, then that means they're going to need a massive amount of power because data centers consume insane amounts of electricity. So I started looking into what's been happening with DC's power infrastructure, and here is where it gets interesting. In August and September of 2025, just weeks after Trump's announced the ballroom in July, PEPCO filed emergency requests for infrastructure work near the East Wing. And this called for an emergency relocation of water infrastructure, large-scale waterline modifications, and something called Champlain Substation Modernization, which I still haven't quite figured out what that means.
Well, I can tell you what it means. It means that it probably is a data center, and it probably is, to a certain degree, going to be used as a data center and bunker and all that other stuff. And then she gets into the people who are the donors for the ballroom. And it's definitely a curious mix of people who are. It's really interesting. She does a good job. I mean, she's a pretty good investigative reporter. I don't know how she. It's a Substack. Ashlyn put the link up there. But it all makes sense, and it all makes me happy. So, well, the Florida Panthers, by the way, arrived at the White House, and the left went nutsoid. We'll follow up on that, too. This is Common Sense Radio. It's the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
I think we should be able to have a civil conversation.
The news and talk that matters to St. Louis.
This conversation has completely made me crazy.
This is complete insanity.
News Talk STL.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something about Newstetter's Fine Jewelry. And I know Valentine's Day now is officially a month, a little bit less than that away. And yeah, Newstetter's has some really great stuff for your lovely one. I'm talking about the stacker rings that are all the rage these days for the ladies. You know, gold is back in style. There was a time when there were people, women would kind of avoid gold because it seemed like it was so 80s. Well, it's back, as you've probably been able to see. And so they have all kinds of really unique gold jewelry for you. And your loved one. And as Diana Newstetter puts it, she can make you a king or a queen for $250. But, you know, if you want to go bigger, they can do that for you as well. Ladies, they have the Frank Sinatra bull of a watch. And, of course, let's talk about the diamonds. These diamonds are beautiful. The lab-grown diamonds, in fact, the Newstetters brought lab-grown diamonds into the St. Louis market. That's why when you hear other people talking about lab-grown diamonds, they basically got the idea from Newstetter's Fine Jewelry, so they are the OG when it comes to lab-grown diamonds. And the lab-grown diamond is really beautiful. It's not fake by any stretch of the imagination, and as we like to say, you know, when you go into Schnucks or Deerbergs or Florist or whatever and get your flowers from there, the flowers are lab-grown flowers, and so you still are able to give those to people. They look beautiful. They're perfect. And everything else. Now, mine diamonds are beautiful, too. They're not always perfect, but they are beautiful. So it just depends on your sensibilities. Either way, Newstetter's Fine Jewelry has all of those options for you and all of those wonderful things for you. So check it out, wowdiamonds.com. It's right there at Doherty Ferry and Big Bend. And let me tell you something, people. They are beautiful people, the Newsteaders. And, of course, Cindy is there, and Anna is there as well, and they're ready to rock. God is welcome here is above the door, so they're your kind of people for sure. WowDiamonds.com. That's WowDiamonds.com.
They served our country with honor. Now it's our turn to serve them. Join the freedom13.org for an unforgettable gala honoring America's heroes, February 27th at the Foundry Arts Center in St. Charles. A special evening supporting Freedom 13's bold mission. 50 camps in 50 states on more than 50,000 acres, building 650 homes for veterans, police, and their families. Tickets and sponsorship opportunities are available now. Visit thefreedom13.org. That's thefreedom13.org.
PRI Global now has Prismatic, an AI-driven platform that can help you and your business, especially in construction. Simplify your operations, secure data, modernize your business from the cloud up. Visit PRIGlobal.com. Innovation with talent and technology. People, process, platform. PRI Global delivers all three. Check them out. PRIGlobal.com. PRIGlobal.com.
If you have a phone, you have a radio.
Yes, I listen on my phone.
Download the all-new News Talk STL app.
Love the all-new News Talk STL app.
It is awesome.
And listen anytime.
Love the News Talk STL app.
Anywhere.
Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Friday. It's a fancy Friday for all of you, indeed. It's Common Sense Radio. Jamie Allman here in Ashland over there. So just to put a little bow on this real quickly. See, I and again, I don't think that her motivation was to kind of blow the lid off of something they're doing. I think most Americans, if they are given this information that, hey, that ballroom really isn't a ballroom, it's just a front for a data center and a bunker and all this stuff, I'd be like, cool. It's awesome. It's a good idea. Say you're going to build a giant ballroom, and you are building a ballroom, but there's like a trap door on it. Because it's kind of like having the bookcase, right, that moves. That you could that is actually a door. That's great. I love that idea. And so President Trump is probably doing everybody a favor, and in fact, even future presidents a favor. Sally says, Jamie, remember the left lost their minds over Trump remodeling the 1960 mint green bathroom. Yeah, I know. It's now glamorous marble and updated everything else, yeah. There's probably some high-velocity weapon behind the wall, too. I don't know. Who cares? I think it's great. Reminded me of all this intrigue. Reminds me of the other night. I was up really late watching reruns of Blacklist. You ever seen Blacklist, Ashlyn? With James Spader in it? It's really good. It was like one after the other. By the time 2 o'clock in the morning rolled around, I was like, I better get to bed here. This is crazy. I kind of do that sometimes because it was after the football game. It was Monday. Yeah, I was watching the football game. And so I just decided I'm going to watch something else now. I think it came on Netflix. But Blacklist is a great show, and Spader is really a great actor. So I watched that, and it reminded me of one time I literally was up. I had to be up until like 3 o'clock in the morning or something, watching reruns of Murder, She Wrote with Angela Lansbury. And actually, Murder, She Wrote's a great show because it's really, it's hard to figure out. I mean, you'd think that it would be like really easy. Oh, it's just some old lady, detective, whatever. And it actually was written so well that it was really a ton of fun to watch. I watched I must have watched maybe 6, 7 of these things because it was back to back. It was like Murder She Wrote a Palooza or something. I was like, oh, I'm in. But yeah, once the one ends and then the other starts right away, I'm like, okay, I can watch one more here. Okay, I can watch another one here. So anyway, all right, back to this ballroom. So then she looked at it's called the Dre Dossier, and it's a Substack, and I presume you have to subscribe to it or whatever. Well, I actually didn't have to subscribe to it. I just got it right off of the interwebs here. So anyway, she looked at the people who were funding the ballroom. And I always thought it was like a couple of a couple of happy-go-lucky bazillionaires or whatever. But no, she found this. In the structure, it's Clark for excavating, Caterpillar to do the other stuff, and they're paying part of it. The power grid is Pepco and Blackstone. You guys know Blackstone, right? And then Microsoft and something called Booz Allen are doing the network. And then Union Pacific, Boxabell, and then there's a classified network underground, backup generators, and everything. Carrier is donating the HVAC system. But she notes that Carrier has a division called Carrier Quantum Leap. And that is their data center solutions, offering comprehensive energy-efficient solutions for data center thermal management. So Carrier's involved, but not just, and Carrier's a great product anyway. So the question, she says, are they donating a basic ballroom AC system or their specialized data center cooling infrastructure? That's pretty cool, right? And I hope they are. But she's saying, well, why would Carrier be involved just as for the HVAC for the ballroom when you could use their division called Carrier Quantum Leap, which is a cooling operation for data centers. And there's a guy named Paolo Traumani from Boxabell is on the list. And she says that's curious because Boxabell makes foldable prefab buildings marketed for disaster relief. But they've also sent over 150 units to Guantanamo Bay. They work on Class 5 military installations, and the units come pre-installed with caging, electromagnetic shielding, and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty clear that there's something going on. There's something that's going to be underneath the ballroom. And I think that's really super cool. And I'm glad she brought it up. And she goes, and then there's Caterpillar, which makes industrial generators providing more than 100 megawatts of backup power. Another donor is Union Pacific, which owns 14,000 miles of classified fiber optic cables, serving as the Department of Defense's secure telecommunications backbone. So these are all Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Palantir, Booz Allen, Hamilton they all do classified networks for intelligence agencies. Blackstone installing more than 200 megawatts of backup power infrastructure. So here's what's crazy, and I think this is so cool. So this ballroom has the most that you could possibly imagine, backup generators, all this kind of stuff. So this ballroom is really just, again, like that bookcase that will move and turn into something completely different if it has to be. And I think that is really cool. And it wouldn't surprise me in the least that it's Trump's doing, because I got to tell you, these guys seemingly knows so much more than we even imagine. He's always seemingly right about his guesses and his instincts and everything else. So this is pretty cool, and I hope it's really part of some larger type of data center, military installation, bunker, what have you. By the way, really quickly, Machado has just left the White House. She gave President Trump her Nobel Peace Prize. And now Jimmy Kimmel is offering to give all of his Emmys and all that kind of stuff to Trump. If I'm President Trump, let's take him, buddy. Take him for sure. Go ahead and go big or stay home. All right, my friends, coming up, the Florida Panthers in their appearance at the White House, flipping a ton of people out, but that's good. Yeah, President Trump, take Kimmel's awards, man. I would go ahead and do it, and I would melt them down into a necklace that you can wear with your sunglasses and get your picture taken, buddy. I would do it, President Trump. Actually, take Kimmel's awards and then just basically make a video of you throwing them in the garbage. That'd be great. Oh, I would take them, please. Happy Fancy Friday, everybody. It's Common Sense Radio.
This is Tony Colombo, and my favorite Capriati sandwich is the cheesesteak made with American Wagyu beef from Snake River Farms, and you have to include a side of their amazing fries. I love Capriati's, and you will too.
Open 9 to 9 daily on Manchester at McKnight in Rock Hill.
Concerned about the condition of your windows driving up your energy bills? I was too. It's only called STL Windows and Doors. Their Provia windows combine old world craftsmanship the professional way, the Provia way, with over 65 years of combined experience, locally owned, offering competitive pricing and personalized service that the big box companies can't match. Call today for your free in-home estimate and start saving tomorrow. 314-277-5952 or stlwindowsanddoors.com.
News Talk STL is proud to have Doug Voss of Safe Money Radio as part of our lineup each week. Doug has been a staple on the St. Louis radio airways for many years as one of the leading financial experts in the area. You can now hear Doug and Safe Money Radio 2 times every weekend on News Talk STL. But in case you miss anything, you can check it all out at DougVossSafeMoneyRadio.com. You could also reach Doug at 844-676-SAFE. That's 844-676-7233.
Doug Voss is a registered representative. Securities offered through DHL Securities, LLLP, member FINRA and SIPC.
On the next,
Larry Connors, USA.
Today's story behind the story, a Russian sub with nuclear missiles is lost at sea.
Larry Connors, USA. Now, weeknights 6 until 8 on News Talk STL.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a happy Fancy Friday to all of you and yours. It's Common Sense Radio. Jamie Allman here and Ashland there. A 3-martini lunch, people. Come down and have a drink with me at Santino's tonight, shall we? Right off of 55, the Imperial exit. Hang out there. Gonna order some of that Sicilian cuisine, too. It's pretty cool. So we were wondering earlier in the week, it does seem like the most bat crap crazy loud people who are all protesting in Minneapolis and beyond are always these women, not just middle-aged women, but women and screaming and yelling and apparently wanting to also become millionaires like everybody else who gets their butts kicked. They go on GoFundMe and boom, there you go. And I was trying to figure out like what exactly is going on here regarding the preponderance of really rabid crazy females. Megan Murphy is the one who went on X, and she says she thinks she's figured it out. She says, I have determined that middle upper class progressive millennial women are the worst of all demographics. Middle upper class progressive millennial women. It makes sense. Millennial, what is it, 30-something, 40s? The combination of complete obsession with their own thoughts, trauma, mental illness, and very special uniqueness and a view of the world that centers on privilege, oppression, has made them not only unable to deal with their own life problems effectively, I recommend stoicism and lifting weights, but also unable to see the world outside their own ideological, hyper-therapized framework. They seem to think therapy language will resolve their own problems, relationship problems, and ideological, political language will resolve the world's problems. It's weird. Probably uncoincidentally, there are also the women who are all on antidepressants, benzos for sleep, and anti-anxiety pills, and in therapy for life. My emotions are so very unique and special and need special pills and therapy to fix, but actually none of it is fixable thing, combined with the I'm so empathetic and care so much about the oppressed of the world, and oh gosh, it's so upsetting, how can anyone not be as empathetic and understanding as me, is probably the most annoying combination of annoying personality traits. Also, they seem to make everything worse for themselves and everyone else. In general, I think it's the millennials who are the worst of all generations, even more so than the Gen Zs, who at least have an excuse, having grown up on screens and appear to have some basic instincts and a better sense of humor, which I think is pretty true now that you mention it, although I will have to differ on the all millennials thing because, as I just mentioned, it is Ethan's 36th birthday. He's a millennial. And Katie, on the 9th of February, will turn 34. And they're both very well adjusted and accomplished and like the least needy people I know. But I do notice, though, that when it's the Gen Zs, and Gen Zs, Ashley, are what, are the 20s? Like 20s? Is that what that is?
Yeah, it's like also me. I'm 29, so
okay.
I just start the Gen Z.
Oh, you start the Gen Z? Yeah. So what are the 21-year-olds then? X?
I think they're still
Gen X? I don't know.
I think they're still Gen Z.
Okay. So I really feel like there is. I think I agree with her when she talks about the hardiness and the sense of humor of the Gen Zers over the millennials, and it's true. You go into that 30-something crowd, and there are some real brooders, man. I mean, there are people. They're not happy people, and I think part of that comes having raised two millennials. I mentioned earlier about the What to Expect When You're Expecting book that we looked at when Ethan and Katie were babies, right? And they told you it was like over managing parenthood. So that's where you got the idea of the helicopter parents, helicopter parenting, where you're hovering and doing all this kind of stuff. And then What to Expect When You're Expecting you had to go by this guide of, because it was kind of a new frontier in raising children. And it's like, well, you should always say please to your children when you want them to do something, and say please and this and this and this. And so there's this feeling that I think that it comes from being overmanaged when you were children. Either overmanaged or you were not disciplined as children. I remember sometimes, and this was always very frustrating, like when you had a bunch of people together and they had their kids over, or they had your kids and the kids were playing, And there's always those people with the really obnoxious kids who would take toys and be just little jackasses, you know? And the parents would never discipline them. They'd pretend like they didn't see it. They'd pretend like they didn't see it. And you guys know that probably still happens. You've probably noticed that too, where parents or kids are being jerks and parents are just kind of like pretending like not to notice. And so they don't do anything about it. So the kids never really get disciplined for what they're doing. So, you know, I think I heard Ken on the Vic show. He was talking about how he ran away and from home once. And spent the night like in a tent or something, came back, and his parents were like all worried about him and, you know, apologetic, and like he didn't realize how much they really cared. It's like, if I ran away and spent the night out and I came back, I'd have my ass kicked. Like that would never happen in a million years. I don't know how old Ken is, but if I ran away and didn't come back and made my parents worry, they'd change the locks. I would never be able to come back in the house after they beat my ass. So, I mean, that just was, I was surprised when Ken said that. It was like, you know, and my parents, I didn't realize how much they loved me. I'm like, whoa, you're lucky, dude. You're lucky they didn't beat you within an inch of your life, man. But anyway, I think that's where a lot of this self-absorption comes. I don't know where. Oh, thank you, DLW. He broke it down. Okay, Greatest Generation, born 1901, 1927. Silent Generation, born 1928 to 1945. That makes sense. Baby Boomers, 1946 to 64, so I'm a boomer. Gen X, born approximately 1965, 1980. Yeah, okay, good. You people who know this stuff are really nice. Thank you. But yeah, so I think that comes from that. So you have some really like a lot of the women who are in their 30s when they're out there at these things. They're like the loudest, most violent ones, you know. And millennials born approximately 81 to 96. Gen Z born 1997 to 2009. Generation Beta 2025 to 2039. Gotcha. So, but they're the loudest, most angry people, and it's really kind of crazy. And then you have, though, that 50, 60-something woman who is out there, and they're pretty obnoxious, too. They're just not as violent as the others. So there's your explanation for all that. I want to get to this really quickly. This is President Trump and the Florida Panthers came to the White House, and this is what President Trump had to say.
After a shortened off-season and a regular season plagued by injuries.
By the way, they're all wearing red ties, which, you know, is I guess red is the Panther, but they're all wearing red ties, which is really cool. And so the left are all going crazo because they're all wearing what they're thinking are Trump ties, and they're angry.
After a shortened off-season and a regular season plagued by injuries, the Florida Panthers entered the 2025 playoffs with extraordinary pressure to defend the title, but they also had an amazing aura about them. It was called the aura of winning.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, DLW says, and blue suits, too. Yeah, and blue suits. So they basically, and the only better thing that would have been great is if President Trump wore his classic red tie. But they were all in red ties and blue suits.
Something nice about it. And that's what they did. But not only did you live up to the sky-high expectations, you gave us perhaps the most dominant playoff run in NHL history. The Panthers scored 94 goals in the playoffs, more than any team in a generation. You won a record 10 times on the road. It was... nobody's ever done that one before. You led the finals for over 255 minutes, the most of any team in NHL history. And you denied Canada the Stanley Cup for the 32nd straight year by... I don't know. What do you think about that? What do you think about that, Matthew?
I love the
fact
fact
competition with Canada.
Yeah, I love the fact that he takes a shot at Canada. I would, too. I did not know this, people. Uh, maybe I'm not paying enough attention, but are you telling me that a Canadian team has not won the Stanley Cup for 32 years? That's impossible to. Well, it's not impossible to believe, but if that's right, that should be humiliating for Canada. Like, I mean, they should be hanging their heads in shame that that a Canadian team has not won a Stanley Cup for 32 years. That's amazing. I know we had one of them. The Blues had one of them. Oh, by the way, I know Mayor Margaret, who I haven't seen on the feed for a while. When we were talking about this, everybody was wondering what's going to happen with Arenado, and then it turns out that Arenado has been traded, and so he waived his thing. Let's see. Let me see here. What did they say? I'm sorry, I just figured it out. So, Arizona Diamondbacks acquiring 8-time All-Star third baseman Nolan Arenado, trade with the St. Louis Cardinals, and so you can look forward to watching Nolan Arenado in next year's playoffs and maybe even the World Series, because that's what we do in Cardinal Nation. Now, I'm going to leave open the possibility these guys are actually going to give us something to work with in this situation and give us something to enjoy this season. But you guys Cardinals better come up with some decent names. And you never know. Sometimes the names don't sound familiar right off the bat. And they become familiar right away. So it's not like we're going to maybe get a major star or what have you. But I will tell you that I think a lot of people didn't want Arenado to leave. And Arenado was a star on the Cardinal team. Now, again, I don't know a whole hell of a lot about baseball. About management of baseball, management of baseball teams and that kind of thing. But I know as a fan, it gets tiring after a while of watching the Cardinals just unload people that we wind up watching thrive in other cities. Harrison Bader's a great example. That I don't know how well he did in New York, but they for a while they loved him in New York, Harrison Bader. But so I'm not quite sure. Like after a while, it gets kind of tiring to have people you grow to love taken away from you. And by the way, thanks to the fact that the Cardinals rarely are the games televised in any normal kind of setting, Arenado was one of the few names we actually knew on the St. Louis Cardinals. That was one of the problems, is that the way that things are going now with streaming and all this kind of stuff, it's hard for fans to become familiar with the team unless they go to the games often. And there weren't people going to the games because the Cardinals weren't doing well. And again, it takes a lot to make a Cardinal fan angry and or disenchanted, and the Cardinals managed to do that last year. And I never thought I'd see the day where I saw a stadium that was half filled. And getting rid of people like Arenado, and all the little kids loved him, all their little Arenado jerseys and bobbleheads and things like that, and now he's gone. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just not. I just don't know enough about baseball and don't get it. And don't approach it emotionally, Allman. You need to approach it logistically. Crunch the numbers. It's like, okay, I'll do that. Maybe someday. You guys have a great, wonderful, and blessed weekend. Ashland, thank you so much. Tony Colombo and Company, straight ahead.
Hi, it's Chris Arps, and I've been a customer of Royal Banks Missouri for many years. They're a full-service, locally owned and operated community bank with 17 locations throughout the St. Louis area, including locations in Hannibal, Jerseyville, Granite City, as well as 2 locations in St. Charles. Plus, given today's headlines in the overall banking industry, it is reassuring to know Royal Banks of Missouri has the highest financial ratings in St. Louis for stability